But what we wanted to start with was so John Madden died.
Yeah, he passed away on
the 28th, I think.
8th, okay, so a few days ago. And honestly, just a couple days after the documentary that they had on Christmas Day on Fox, which I know you saw most of. I saw some of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they did a documentary on his life and football and all of that, and it was very well done.
Yeah.
And 90 minutes long, so not too long. And I thought very very well done, encapsulated his life, and the interviews that they had were fantastic. I mean, they had Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells and Jimmy Johnson and Troy Aikman and Tom Brady, and I mean, they really had the best of the stuff. So
yeah, they had like moments of silence before the games today.
Yep.
And then if you were watching on, I mean, they show a little, like there were little parts that they showed throughout, because he worked at CBS and he worked at Fox. So yeah, so they were showing stuff from different stuff, showing him stuff with Pat Summerall, and then like in fact this week I was actually going back, I was watching some different like YouTube video. Like I watched a YouTube video of John Madden speaking at Pat Summerall's funeral when Pat Summerall passed away several years ago or whatever it was. That was really good. He's a really good. I mean, just like you would expect. Like he was such a great commentator during games that he was just great, just going over a bunch of different stuff. And there were some funny parts, and there was just some it was really good.
Yeah,
amazing guy.
Yeah, we grew up. This was one of the main people broadcasting games when we grew up.
Yeah.
So
throughout the 90s, and then he was on CBS, and then he was on Fox,
and then
the last game he did on Fox was the Patriots first Super Bowl. So that was the last one he did with Pat Summerall, and then he did Monday Night Football for a few years.
Monday Night Football on ABC, and then he did Sunday Night on NBC with Al Michaels.
Al Michaels for those last several years or whatever. And his last Super Bowl was the Cardinals and the Steelers, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Call games throughout his entire broadcasting career.
Yeah, pretty influential. I mean, we did not, we're not old enough to know him as a coach, but we knew he was a coach.
Yeah.
And, for people that don't know, so he was the youngest head coach ever. He got the job when he was 32.
Wow.
Coached for 10 years, made 7 AFC championship games.
Yeah.
Won one Super Bowl. Might have won another one if it wasn't for that immaculate reception.
Well, yeah, and if you've seen interviews with Madden when he's talking about that game, he's like, back in those days, he says you couldn't have like a double touch on the football. So it was kind of like, oh man, it feels like they kind of missed the call there. The Raiders might have gotten to the Super Bowl that year. But I mean, yeah, that's crazy, because I mean, during that time, it was the Raiders, the Steelers, the Dolphins. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anybody else in the AFC back then, because those were kind of the 3 main teams in the AFC in the 70s. So, yeah.
Yeah, so he had the best winning percentage of any coach that has at least 100 wins.
Yeah.
And that still stands today. That's pretty impressive.
Well, what's crazy about that is we know him as a broadcaster, and obviously we played the video game. But we, like, as a coach, but there's people older than us who can think of all 3 different phases, so that's pretty correct to have. As I was watching, I was listening to Bill Simmons' podcast, and he was talking to, I forget, he was interviewing about it, but it's like half hour, and they were just talking about all their memories of John Madden and all the things that they, thought were amazing about him and all that stuff. But it's like he had 3 like careers, if you want to call it that, where he was a coach and he was highly successful, a broadcaster. In terms of like, because football became and it's interesting, throughout our lives, football has become this thing where it's insanely popular. I mean, it was insanely popular in the 80s and the 90s, but it, like, over the last 20 years, it has become just ginormous, and one of the people that kind of helped that is John Madden, because people know who John Madden is. John Madden taught people about, like Bill Simmons was talking about this a lot, like he taught people about football when he's diagramming plays, because I guess people didn't do that before him. really, to that level. And also he had a way about doing things that was kind of funny, and it was kind of like you were just hanging out with a friend and he was just explaining the game to you.
Yeah, and what I didn't, I learned some stuff from the documentary that I didn't realize. So he got an education degree. So he was a teacher when he coached in college. You had apparently that's how it worked. Then you had to teach at the school also if you wanted to coach football.
Right.
So
Right.
that's why it makes sense to me now that he was very matter of fact and could explain the game as simple as possible, to people who didn't know football. And
Right.
so I think that's why he's got the everyman quality.
Yeah.
It's not too smart. He's not trying to be too, cerebral where people can't understand
No, but
it.
that's the thing. He was funny, but he was also very smart. I mean, I can remember. I mean, some of the stuff he would do was hilarious. He's like pointing out. He's like, and he'd have the telestrator. He's like, see, he's got a lot of sweat here. This guy's really sweating. He's like pointing out different guys that are sweating, and then he's like talking about different stats. He's like, see here, you got the rack, you got the rushing after the catch, you got the yak, you got the yards after the catch, you got just all the different things he would do that were kind of like hilarious and almost like funny, but it was funny, but it wasn't like you thought like this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. It's like this guy knows what he's talking about, but he's also really funny.
Yeah, I think like I said, it also he also fits perfectly into that time. We didn't have all of the resources and information that we have now, so
Right.
it was perfect for him to be that way. I don't think you could do that now. I think if somebody acted, broadcasted games like he did, I think it would just become an internet fodder. Tony Romo went from everybody loves this guy to I think people are starting to really not. People are really starting to have a problem with him, which he's the same guy. He hasn't changed. It's just so
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah. I think
It is one of those things where like I've heard this where like people on Twitter, like just as a comparison, people on Twitter like would say, I don't like Lou, like they didn't like Lou Holtz on ESPN and they didn't like Chris Berman. And it's like, yeah, but Twitter doesn't really represent everybody. Most people thought Chris Berman was like, oh, that guy's awesome. They thought Lou Holtz was awesome,
right.
and like, but back in the day that would be fine because really all you had was talk radio, but even talk radio wasn't what it is now, and you didn't have all these talking heads on TV. So you could do something really well and be beloved and it would be fine. You wouldn't have people tearing you. I mean, Frank Caliendo famously does that John Madden impersonation where he's kind of making fun of him, but like, they say like, what is it? Or not impersonation.
Caricature
is the sincerest form of flattery, like that. I don't think that he was necessarily making fun of the guy. I mean, he was sort of was, but it was just kind of tongue in cheek and whatever. But yeah, I don't think you could be beloved just because of the way our culture is now.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I recommend the documentary. One of the really cool things I thought was that when they had other players or other coaches react to stuff, Madden would watch what they said, and you got to watch Madden watch what they were saying, which right. I thought was really cool. And, it was, I did not realize, yes, I understand his, how big a deal he is as far as football goes. I did not realize the reverence and the appreciation that everybody had for him. It was, and the, it really shows how, so he was afraid to fly. He would not fly. And the last time he flew in a plane was in 1990. And so he would take this bus across the country and he would just stop at places.
Yeah.
He would just stop at places and just talk to people. Just go to whatever restaurant they were at and just sit. And it really paints a really cool picture of, he really was a great human being. And, deserves a lot of credit. He changed the game. I mean, it's the way
we we're old enough because we played the first Madden football game. We played Madden 94 and 95 and then it obviously progressively got better and better. They put it on, PlayStation 2 and, and that kind of that's crazy that a lot of people, like Bill Simmons on his podcast was saying that like his son was watching the documentary and he's like, oh, that guy was a football coach, because his son only knows him from the video game, which the video game is a huge deal. Like players now, like they get upset if their Madden rating is too low, which is crazy. So it's just like a part of, he's one of those people that's the things, him and the things that he's done are just part of the culture. Like, and it's crazy when you think about that, because there's so few things that are really like that, so that's so few things cut through everything else. And
Yeah, I was listening to this interview with I forget what sports writer it was, but he basically said that the NFL through time, as the rules have changed, have basically the NFL kind of looks more like the video game now. Like the NFL's gotten closer to the video game as time has gone on, and I didn't even think about it that way, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, it's funny because like before Madden, you had football games, but they weren't that realistic. You had Tecmo Super Bowl, you had Tecmo Bowl, you had some other stuff, right? But Madden was insistent, no, there have to be 11 guys on each side, which was difficult as hell for them to do in the first place, because they only had, the first one was on Sega Genesis and it was only 16 bits. So yeah, that's kind of interesting how that he made sure that the game became more realistic, and over time it did become more and more and more realistic.
Hang on just a second. Yeah, I thought it was really fantastic, and I'm glad that that we got to witness.
Yeah, I mean, he called some really huge games. I mean, he called the last Super Bowl that he called on Fox was the one where the Patriots beat the Rams. The game became, so much more realistic. Trying to think. Yeah, I think that was the last part of what I was saying. But yeah, just an amazing guy. Or no, I was talking about the Rams Patriots Super Bowl. And I remember that before the last drive, he was saying, "No, I think you got to play for overtime here." And the first couple passes, he's like, "I don't really agree with what they're doing," And then it's kind of like they make a play, and he's like, "Yeah, actually, I think I kind of like what the Patriots are doing right now."
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just rarely do you find somebody that's successful in that many areas.
Yeah. So yeah, great broadcaster. I mean, and there's just no one. There's aspects of other people that are kind of, you can see with Madden. There's kind of some playfulness, some kind of joking around, but no one's really, And the funny thing is that like Chris Collinsworth, he'll educate you on the game, right? And I think he's really great. I think he's awesome, and people hate him. And I'll hear people say that. I'm like, why do you hate him? Oh, he's just so smug, and thinks he knows everything. I'm like, you realize he played the game, right? And he's been a commentator for like 20 years or 30 years now. So like, I think he knows what the hell he's talking about. Like,
well, it's kind of like
people just get,
Yeah, it's kind of like when I'm watching a game with our dad, and he complains that the announcer never shuts up. Who is this guy? He never shuts up. Well,
it's
kind of his job to talk. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I get that.
So rest in peace, John Madden. Good, wishes to
career.
Wishes to his family, and
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I'll say is, I mean, he lived to be 85, and he lived a pretty full life. So it's obviously sad whenever someone passes away, but you hope that they had a good long life and they were able to, accomplish some things and all that. So